path forward on President Trump's sweeping tax and spending bill. Senate Majority Leader John Thune is setting out an ambitious timeline to pass a bill by July 4th, and he says they're on track to do it. It is still a closely divided Senate, though, and you have one group of Republicans who are concerned about Medicaid specifically because they're from states which depend on it. West Virginia Senator Shelley Moore Capito says she heard a lot of concern in her state over the proposed changes. Some senators want to see more cuts across the board.
The House did a pretty good job, in my opinion. We can do more, I think, in the Senate. And I've said repeatedly, I'm all for reducing spending until we run out of votes. But we need to pass something because we need to renew the tax cuts.
Another group of senators threatening to vote no over concerns about the deficit. House Speaker Mike Johnson has promised the bill doesn't increase it. Senator Rand Paul says the bill contains a measure to raise the debt ceiling, something he and a few others oppose.
You can say it doesn't directly add to the debt, but if you increase the ceiling $5 trillion, you'll meet that. And what it does is it puts it off the back burner, and then we won't discuss it for a year or two. So I think it's a terrible idea to do this.
Has this president called you? Have you spoken to him about this?
I spoke to him this week, had a lengthy discussion with him.
How did that go?
He did most of the talking.
He didn't convince you.
Joining me now in the group chat, Jackie Kucinich, CNN political analyst and Washington bureau chief for the Boston Globe, Chuck Rocha, Democratic strategist and senior advisor to the Bernie Sanders presidential campaigns, and Ashley Davis, former White House official under George W. Bush. Welcome, guys.
Good morning.
Good to have you. Jackie, I want to start with you because you heard there even the Senator Paul was on the phone with Trump. So obviously Trump is leaning in to try and crack some of those who are putting some who are raising opposition to the bill. What are your reporters saying about what they're learning?
You know, I think Trump also got on the phone with Josh Hawley, who's another senator who's been very outspoken from Missouri. And he's had a New York Times op-ed about his concerns about cuts to Medicaid. And it does seem like they have a lot to talk about in this bill. And the Senate, when has the Senate not wanted to change something that the House sent over? So what can they change that won't upset Mike Johnson's math? That's the open question at this point.
Hawley actually said he spoke to Trump. He wrote on Twitter/X, just had a great talk with President Trump about the big, beautiful bill. He said again, no Medicaid benefit cuts. Problem solved. I mean, does he sound convinced? Like, what do you make of that?
Well, I think what you're hearing from House Republicans is that they're not cutting Medicaid. They're cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. I don't know if that's going to fly when senators actually start digging into it. That's messaging, not necessarily what the bill does.
Okay, you guys.
When you start explaining how you're not cutting Medicaid, the explaining part is what political consultants like, because you're cutting Medicaid. It could be folks that they deem not qualified to be on Medicaid, and that's their right. But to me, it's cutting Medicaid, and when I make a TV commercial, it'll say cut Medicaid. This is what Senator Hawley doesn't want. This is what a lot of Republicans in the midterms don't want. And I understand that we have a budget debate and we can go through the policies and the nuances, and I'm not going to be the policy expert. I'll leave that to my friend Ashley, but I will say that for making political ads, if you cut Medicaid, that's what I'm going to say.
Okay, Ashley, I want to get to you, but Chuck just brought up this idea about political ads. The Conservative Club for Growth is already releasing ads targeting Lisa Murkowski and Kevin Cramer, some people who are also reluctant, and they want to put some pressure on them. Here's a little bit of it.
One big, beautiful bill. We love that bill.
But there's one big problem. Senator Kevin Cramer opposing Trump's bill because it guts Biden's climate law, saying, quote, there are too many things in there that are too important. Tell Murkowski, don't block Trump's agenda. Make tax relief permanent, because strong hands built Alaska.
Okay, so the voice actors who do these kinds of ads are going to be busy because it's like, tell so-and-so that they're screwing you.
But I also think that's going to play differently in North Dakota than it is in Alaska.
But it's the fact that the ads are targeted, I think.
Yes, and which is the new way of life right now, right? I mean, in general. But let's just go back to the bill for 2 seconds. The Senate Republicans are meeting today. Thune's going to tell them he wants this done by June 20, the week of June 23rd on the floor. So that means that it passes by July 4th. We'll see if that happens or not. You have 5 committees this week coming out with their package of the bill. They're not going to do markups in their committee. You have Ron Johnson and Rick Scott, who've kind of changed their tunes over since last night in regards to, like, listen, we want certain things. We're concerned about the deficit. We're concerned about the budget. However, we want this bill to pass. And then you have Josh Hawley, you know, kind of stepping things back a little bit. So
I feel like I need a chart.
You're really dealing with, and the other 2 senators that you're really dealing with are Murkowski and Collins, right? So that's your universe to get on board. But they're moving quick, and he's going to try to get this done. And
So you think even the speed is a factor?
Yeah.
I think speed is the most important factor. They got to get this done. Yes, this thing hangs out there longer. You start losing people. It's going to be bad.
I think the bill gets passed, number one, and I think they get it passed by the recess because they kind of have to.
Yeah. President Donald Trump working overtime right now to get Republican senators on board and get on board quickly with his sweeping domestic policy agenda as he is aiming to get his massive tax cut and spending bill that passed the House to get it passed through the Senate and headed to him before July 4th. He had the Senate Majority Leader at the White House yesterday. He's been putting in personal calls to some of the other Republicans who have been the most vocal with their concerns about what's headed their way. Republicans making clear that changes are coming to the House-passed bill. But how much and what? A lot of Republicans talking specifically about changes to the trillions of dollars in cuts to programs like food stamps and Medicaid and the impact that would have on their constituents. Maine's Senator Susan Collins telling reporters she's, quote, very concerned about not only low-income families, but our rural hospitals. Other senators, of course, are concerned about the impact the bill will have on the deficit. Rand Paul concerned about the debt ceiling.
You can say it doesn't directly add to the debt, but if you increase the ceiling $5 trillion, you'll meet that. And what it does is it puts it off the back burner, and then we won't discuss it for a year or two. So I think it's a terrible idea to do this.
Joining me right now is the former Republican governor of New Hampshire, Chris Sununu. It's good to see you.
You bet. Good to be here.
So the Senate takes up the bill now, and Republicans have made no secret that they will see changes, though Thune seems to try to be suggesting that it's not going to veer too far from the priorities. But take a senator like Josh Hawley. He's conservative. He has been very vocal about he will not support, cannot support any cuts to Medicaid benefits. He called it, what he said as he wrote about this, he said cutting funding for a program like Medicaid would be morally wrong and politically suicidal. Do you agree with that?
It's not politically suicidal, and I don't think it's morally wrong. I think it's just a huge number. And the dynamic comes to this. Most states have expanded Medicaid.
Yep.
Under traditional Medicaid, the feds pay 50%, the state pays 50%. But under expanded Medicaid, 90% is paid by the federal government. So what they're saying is, okay, let's ratchet that back.
But didn't you do that in New Hampshire?
We do. We do it in New Hampshire. So the question is, are they going to be dumb and cut the whole thing back to 50%? Or are they going to ramp it down, block grant more of this money to the states? See, with a block grant, let the states decide how much go to SNAP, how much go to supporting rural hospitals and things of that nature. They're also looking to cut back that tax. It's kind of a matching tax that then goes to support a lot of the traditional or non-Medicaid patients, those that have uncompensated care, as we call it. That's the rural hospital argument you see. So I don't think it's politically suicidal if they do it the right way.
Where's the disconnect between, you do not think it's politically suicidal. No. Why does Josh Hawley then think it's politically suicidal?
Because everyone in Washington is a coward. I mean, really, everything they do in D.C. is based on the lowest common denominator of tough decisions. They don't want to make any tough decisions. They have to cut money somewhere. They got to have to make some changes.
5 seconds ago in relative history, we're also a man that needed to get elected and needed to answer to his constituents. What if this is them answering to their constituents?
I'm telling you, if you can cut taxes, if you can find ways to make tough decisions, be super transparent about it, people want to know the government is spending their money in a responsible way, and they know that sometimes that's a tough decision. To say that we're not going to do anything on Medicaid, you know what that tells America? We're going to do nothing on Social Security or Medicare or any of these other things. We're going to keep running up our debts. We're going to keep spending money in inefficient ways. We're not willing to make those tough decisions. So it's not easy, but the American people want to know that there's responsibility on the other end. I'm not saying you go slash Medicaid, but you find ways to let the states make more decisions on their own so that they can make those shifts, get rid of the bureaucracy and the wasted money. Get a lot of look, it's a state-run program with federal money, so let the states run it. I can't tell you Let's say I needed a new pharmaceutical, a new medication for someone with a rare disease. You know, it would take me almost 2 years as a governor to sometimes get that approved by the federal government. Why? Let the states decide. Let the states have more power and say in it, and you'll save tons of money without losing any access to services.
It is fascinating to hear you say that those in Washington are all cowards. I think a lot of people saw the flip, which was Josh Hawley standing up and speaking out against what maybe Donald Trump's position he thought would be, which is cutting Medicaid benefits, which people still fear is actually going to happen. That actually was a sign of courage on the part of a conservative Republican senator.
Yeah, if you're looking at the courage against the administration and all that, I'm just looking at courage to make tough decisions and say, look, we have a fiscal crisis. We have a very inefficient Medicaid system. There's much better ways to make the entire system more efficient without losing all. It isn't about the federal government saying we're taking this SNAP benefit or we're taking this access to rural hospitals. It's letting the states decide how to best manage that, ramping it down over time so that the states can adjust with their matching dollars.